My Uber driver insulted me, so I got him fired without trying. I never imagined a short ride across town could end up changing my week, and not in a good way. But here I am typing this out like it's a weird fever dream where karma did all the work and I just watched it happen. If you want the short version. Guy was rude, said something ugly about me, and then the universe and a couple of careless decisions on his part took care of the rest. But of course real life isn't that neat, so here's how it actually went down. It was a Friday night and I'd been out for drinks with friends. Nothing crazy, just a few craft beers and way too much laughter. I left earlier than everyone else because I had an early Saturday morning thing. I opened the Uber app, tapped request, and a driver accepted almost immediately. I checked his rating, 4.3. I hesitated for a second, but it was raining and I just wanted to get home. I told myself that a ride is a ride and half the time the ratings are bullshit anyway. When he pulled up, he looked like the kind of guy who'd been driving for years. Late 30s, worn jacket, a baseball cap pulled low. He popped the trunk, I tossed my tote in and slid into the back seat. He glanced at me in the rear view as he merged into traffic, then out of nowhere he said loud enough for me to hear, "You millennials and your oversharing. Always on your phones, always performing. It's exhausting." I blinked, surprised. I laughed uneasily and said, "Rough night?" He snorted. "Nope. Tired of the entitled types. You probably think you're so special, huh?" I felt a flush rise up my neck. There are different levels of rudeness, and this wasn't just small talk gone sideways. It was packaged contempt. I kept my tone light and said something like, "It's Friday, let's just get through the ride." He muttered something about kids these days and turned the radio up. I scrolled through my phone trying to calm down, but his comments kept stabbing at me. I work hard, pay my bills, and I don't owe anyone a performance. I wanted to say something sharp to tell him how rude he was, but there's this little voice that tells you not to escalate with strangers. So I stayed quiet. The ride was uneventful after that, except for the icy glances in the mirror. When the car pulled up to my building, I fumbled for my card, paid, thanked him with a yes, have a good night, and opened the door to get out. He let out a big exaggerated sigh and said, "Enjoy your perfect little life, darling." The darling was the topper. He meant it to be patronizing. I walked into the lobby and felt stupid for letting his words stick to me, but they did. They stung. I should have left it there. I should have laughed about it later with my friends and moved on. Instead, I did 3 things in the span of 5 minutes that, in hindsight, set the dominoes up perfectly. First, I opened the Uber app and went to rate the driver. I typed out a calm, detailed review. Rude comments about my age and lifestyle, unprofessional tone, made me uncomfortable. 2 stars. Hit submit. Done. Felt like a small, cathartic thing. Second, as I was heading upstairs, I passed the building's security desk where Tiara, the night attendant who knows everyone in the building, was scrolling on her phone. She knows me, she's seen me come and go for years. I told her, casual as I could, "Hey, that Uber driver in the gray Honda, has he ever given you trouble? He was kind of rude tonight." She nodded, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're not the first. He's been seen in the building a few times asking about tenants." That made my stomach drop. He had been poking around. Third, when I got to my apartment I was still simmering, so I texted a quick message to the group chat with my friends about the night. My friend Ben replied with a GIF and asked for the driver's name. I sat there flipping through my app and decided to screenshot the driver's profile. Name, picture, car license plate, and sent it to Ben and to Sarah, who's one of those people who's borderline obsessive about safety. I didn't think twice, I just wanted to vent and make sure friends knew to avoid him. That's where the without trying part came in. I didn't plan to do anything more than vent. I had no interest in ruin, revenge, or public shaming. I went to bed, half miffed and half amused that a stranger had managed to get under my skin. The next morning my phone started blowing up. First Ben, "Dude, that's the guy I used to ride with. He used to talk like that all the time." Then Sarah, "I'm checking." Then a whole slew of shock face emojis and messages asking if I was okay. I assumed it was the usual Friday morning banter until I opened my email. Uber had replied to my complaint. Apparently the driver had been suspended pending review. That was fast. I actually felt a little strange, vindicated, but also weird about how quickly that happened. It was just one ride. Yet in the message they were direct. Multiple complaints, offensive behavior, violating community guidelines. He was pulled off the app until the investigation concluded. For 5 minutes I smiled. Justice? Maybe. Then I shrugged and went about my day. By noon the tone shifted. My building's security texted the residents an unusual piece. "Please lock doors and report any suspicious drivers. If you see a vehicle matching license hashtag, alert security immediately." My chest tightened. I forwarded the text to Sarah and asked, "Is this related?" She replied, "I'm on it." I didn't expect what came next. A series of messages and then a knock at my door. It was Tiara and 2 uniformed city inspectors. They asked if I was the person who reported the Uber driver's behavior. I told them the truth. They explained that someone had reported a driver who had apparently been asking about tenants and trying to gather personal info, descriptions that matched my complaint. One of the inspectors asked for the screenshot I'd sent to Ben and Sarah. I told him I had it. He took a photo of the screenshot on my phone and asked me some routine questions about dates and times. It all felt very formal and slightly surreal. I nodded, answered, and signed something. Then the small thing I did that I didn't expect to have consequences. I mentioned to the inspectors that the driver had been inside our lobby the previous week asking Tiara about renters. They got very attentive. Did he say anything specific? One asked. I repeated the comment about him asking about tenants and that Tiara had seen him loitering. They wrote it down with that exact, focused attention that makes you realize a loose anecdote is becoming evidence. Before they left, the inspector said, "We'll cross-check this with Uber. If there's a pattern, the company is required to suspend or terminate drivers who attempt to solicit information or show predatory behavior." I said thanks and watched them go, trying to tamp down this odd swelling feeling in my chest that I'd somehow set something in motion. By that evening, things escalated faster than I could have predicted. Ben texted me a screenshot of a local private Facebook group where someone had posted a video of the driver in a road rage incident the week before. Then Sarah messaged, "You should see this." She dug into the driver's public social media, not hacking, just clicking around like everyone does, and found a pattern. A string of complaints from neighbors in different neighborhoods about this same guy's aggressive and intrusive behavior, sometimes bordering on stalking. She also spotted a post from someone who claimed the same driver had tried to get into their building claiming he had a delivery. The details were identical enough to give me chills. The final piece fell into place with a call from my building manager. He said, "We had a meeting at the management office. The city inspectors worked with Uber and came in this afternoon. They reviewed some footage and your complaint helped." He sounded embarrassed and a little proud at the same time. He explained they found that the driver had been impersonating delivery personnel to get into residential buildings and asking targeted questions. The building manager said some buildings had been provided with a photo of the guy and asked to keep an eye out. He thanked me for reporting. I felt relieved. It was like the good version of things, where someone does something rude and then gets consequences and no one gets hurt. But that relief quickly curdled when Sarah texted me a screenshot of a message a friend of hers had received from the driver. He'd apparently been suspended and was furious, telling anyone who would listen that some Karen had gotten him suspended and he had a bad review. He'd shared the driver profile screenshot, the same one I had sent, in comments on local pages, naming the building even. He was toxic and loud about it. Then, small world coincidence, the driver's profile popped up again, only this time not on Uber. A local temp agency posted internal notes to their volunteer hiring board. Driver suspended due to harassment claims. Someone at the agency had recognized his face from a previous gig and called in his behavior. Overnight, the story spread between building management groups and a couple of neighborhood forums. The guy was being tracked, reported, and blocked. I tried to tune out the noise, but the next morning I got a message I didn't expect. A terse email from the driver via his temporary job email, forwarded from someone who scooped it online. "If you think you're better than me because you dared to leave a bad review, I hope you're happy." It was menacing in a way that made my stomach drop, and suddenly the whole thing wasn't just about a rude comment anymore. It felt personal. I called the police and filed an incident report about harassment and threats. They told me to save everything and to alert them if anything else came in. What started as a petty, social slight had turned into a full local effort to keep tenants safe. I never intended to get him fired. I just wanted to get home without being insulted. The universe and a few internet-savvy neighbors did the rest. I slept for maybe 3 hours that night and woke up to a voicemail from Uber's safety team asking some clarifying questions about the timeline. They were apologetic and said they appreciated the report. I felt a complicated mix of vindication and guilt. If his livelihood was gone, was I partly responsible? He'd been rude, but firing someone is a big deal. Then the call that made my heart flip. My building manager called to say a detective from the city wanted to speak with me. Apparently, the driver had been traced to a vehicle registration connected to a man who had an active warrant for trespassing in another part of the county. The detective said they didn't want to cause a panic, but that my report was critical in establishing a pattern. The driver had been suspended by Uber and removed from several gig platforms. And now, with police in the loop, they were investigating further. My pulse went from anxious to queasy. I told the detective everything I could remember, and he asked if I wanted to press charges for the harassment email. I told him yes. That afternoon at work, people asked if I was okay. Nobody knew all the details, and honestly, I hadn't processed them fully either. I tried to explain it to my sister on the phone and couldn't hold back a laugh at the absurdity. All I wanted was a dry ride. I'd ended up at the center of something bigger. She told me I did the right thing, that anyone who pokes around buildings and insults passengers doesn't deserve a platform. But even as she said it, I could hear the tremor in my own voice. I didn't want someone who might be unstable to have my address or my name. 2 days later, I got a short email from Uber's safety team confirming that the driver had been permanently deactivated from their platform following the investigation. They thanked me. There was a formal message from the city, too. Due to the information you provided, the subject has been detained for questioning regarding multiple incidents across the region. My stomach dropped, but this time with a kind of heavy, awful closure. I didn't celebrate. Felt messy. I'd wanted to be polite about someone's rude comment, and I'd wound up being a cog in an investigation. But at least the harassing messages stopped. No more menacing emails. No more angry posts. The feeds went quiet and the community thread that had once criticized me for being oversensitive turned into a thread thanking residents for staying vigilant. Then, a week after the driver was gone, a neighbor knocked on my door to tell me something I hadn't expected. Someone had posted a note in the lobby linking my initial complaint screenshot back to me by captioning it, "Karen who got him fired. Watch out." It was small, dumb, and cowardly, but it popped a bubble for me. Someone wanted to make this personal. For a few minutes, I considered deleting everything. My post, my screenshots, even my neighborhood accounts. But then I thought about the women and older folks who'd said similar things about him. I thought about Tiara and the times he'd tried to get into the building. I thought about the official emails from management and the detective's words. I kept the screenshot. I documented everything and forwarded a copy to the detective. The story didn't end with fireworks or a moral epiphany. There were procedural emails, follow-ups, and a sense of being part of a system that could help protect neighborhoods. The driver's name is gone from my app, his social presence scattered, and the man in the baseball cap is off the road while the cops do their job. I learned that small actions, a rating, a screenshot, a chat with a night attendant, can ripple far beyond what you intend. I also learned that when something feels off, it's okay to speak up and that you don't have to be a hero to make a place safer. Would I have preferred to simply shrug and forget? Sure. But the alternative, pretending a stranger's demeaning comment was nothing after I learned he'd been creeping around people's homes, felt wrong. In the end, I wish the whole thing had been less dramatic, but I don't regret reporting it. So yeah, my Uber driver insulted me, and without trying very hard to orchestrate it, I was part of the chain of events that got him off the road.